You know, a lot of ingredients go into making a good horror film. You might have ghosts, zombies, serial killers, monsters. But, you know, some horror movies work and some don't, and some are sort of in the middle. I'm going to talk about some that work very well, in fact, maybe even too well. This is the Kazdoy Closet. I'm Kazdoy. That's my closet, full of all the stuff that I love. And today I want to talk about 3 horror films that really freaked me out. We're going to start in 1968 with George Romero's classic horror film, Night of the Living Dead. And then in 1978, he made a sequel called Dawn of the Dead. He followed that up in 1985 with Day of the Dead. I think they're all really good. I think that's the 3 main films in his Dead trilogy. However, the one that really freaked me out was Dawn of the Dead. Now, I saw this in the theater when I was 22 years old, so I was still a very young, impressionable, innocent Kazdoy. And the tagline for the film was, "When there is no more room in hell, the dead will walk the earth." Now, one thing that I found very effective about this is the makeup job and the clothes. Because the zombies, the makeup is not what we're used to now from watching The Walking Dead, where their skin is hanging down and they're all bruised and there's gouges in their face. Nothing like that. They just had this weird kind of grayish, light green makeup on their face. And along with that, their clothing was normal clothing. It wasn't all tattered and bloody and gross. It was kind of, clean and nice. And the zombies are wearing whatever clothing they were wearing when they became zombies. So you might have some women wearing a nun's habit, or you might have guys wearing a suit and tie, or wearing a sweater or a t-shirt. And I always found that a little bit more disturbing, is when zombies are wearing regular everyday clothes. It gives us a kind of strange reality to it, to me. Now, most people who've seen this, well, everybody who's seen this knows that the main activity takes place in a shopping mall. And back in the 70s and the 80s, that was the place to go, was the shopping mall to hang out. And our heroes are flying over the shopping mall trying to escape, find someplace safe, and they're looking down and they see all the zombies walking slowly toward the shopping mall. And that's because these are slow-moving zombies. They're not the fast ones we saw later, like in 28 Days Later, films like that. And one of the heroes remarks to the other, "I wonder why they're walking over there." And the other hero remarks, "Because this was an important place in their lives at one point." So we're getting a comment on conspicuous consumerism, where you have zombies walking around a shopping mall. Get it? So that's kind of clever. And what really freaked me out about this were the special effects, because this was stuff I had never seen before. For example, when a man hugs his wife, and he's a zombie, but she's not quite convinced he is yet, and he takes a bite out of her shoulder, and you see him taking the bite out of her shoulder with the flesh in his mouth and the blood and everything, and that freaked me out. I never saw anything like that before. Another scene where some of the military guys are going through a household looking for zombies, and they swing a door open, and they find one, and they shoot him with a shotgun, and his head just explodes. And I had never seen that. And then it gets crazier and crazier, where this biker gang is invading the shopping mall, and the zombies ultimately tear him open, or just feeding on his guts and everything. So it's just really over the top. And the effects are those practical effects. So it's not computerized, it's real. And it looks real, and that makes it feel real. And when this film came out, the ratings board wanted to give it an X rating. But as we know, an X rating has a stigma of being pornography, and a lot of theaters won't even show it. So George Romero the director, tried to fight it, and he did, and it ended up with a warning saying no one under 17 will be admitted to this film. So, I went to see this film in a theater with my friend Kevin, and it was over, and we're sitting there stunned, and we're still freaking out over it. And the lights come up, and from the front row comes a man with two little girls, I assume were his daughters. They must have been maybe 8 or 9. And Kevin and I looked at each other like, why would he bring two little girls to this film? I mean, we're in our 20s and we're freaked out and find it very disturbing. Why would he do that? And I always wondered what those kids thought of it and what happened to those two little girls. Maybe they became Kardashians. I don't know. Anyways, that's Dawn of the Dead, the first one that really freaked me out. Now, going back to 1951, The Thing from Another World is now considered a classic of 1950s science fiction. And that was followed up in 1982 with the remake of John Carpenter's The Thing. And then actually they did it again in 2011 with this one, The Thing. And I think all 3 of these are actually really good. But the one that freaked me out, John Carpenter's The Thing. I'm 25 years old when I see this, so still a very young, innocent, impressionable Kazdoy. And I saw it in the theater. I had very low expectations because the reviews really weren't very good. Even though I found out later that it's actually John Carpenter's personal favorite of his films. The tagline in this one was, "Man is the warmest place to hide." And the basic idea behind this is there's an alien, the Thing, we really never see, but he inhabits other living beings, whether it's a human or whether it's an animal. And the suspense is we don't know who has the thing inside of him. So there's some set pieces that are pretty famous at this point. They're just crazy. One is a dog, and the thing inhabits the dog, and the dog freaks out in front of a bunch of other real dogs. There's another part where one of the men, all these men are in an Arctic reserve, sort of secluded and isolated from everybody else. But the thing is among them somewhere, and they're trying to figure out who it is. And one man needs a defibrillator performed on him. So he's laying on a table, and the doctor is ready to give him the defibrillator, and the man's stomach and his chest opens up and turns into a pair of jaws with sharp teeth and cuts the other man's hands off. So just crazy, crazy special effects. Again, done with practical effects, so it's not computerized. It doesn't look video game-ish. It looks real, and just really more of those images like Dawn of the Dead that I will always remember. And this is how many years later. I still remember those images very clearly. This is a pretty popular film. There's so many editions of this. This is an old DVD version I have, but you can get obviously on Blu-ray. You can get steelbook versions. There's all kinds of special deluxe editions of this film. So the last film I want to talk about is a little bit different than the other two because it's grounded more in reality, and it's from 2008, and it's called The Strangers. Now, I saw this when I was 52, so about 10 years ago, so I was no longer a young, impressionable Kazdoy. I was an older, wiser Kazdoy with grayer hair and less hair. And I made the mistake of watching The Strangers late at night with the lights off at home by myself. Now, my son, who's 22, also saw this about a year ago, and he was freaked out by it. So I asked him before I made this video, what freaked you out about that film? And he said, probably because it could happen to anybody. And I looked at the tagline later, and the tagline actually was, what would you do if this happened to you? And the plot is pretty simple. It's a couple. They're in a secluded house. It's not their house. It's like a cabin, or a really nice cabin in the woods at night. And suddenly there's people outside that seem to want to get into their house. And I think that's one of those primal fears, maybe from childhood, where you think somebody's trying to get in and invade your home. And then the other primal fear is when you're sitting home alone and it's late and it's dark and you feel safe and secluded in your house, and all of a sudden there's a knock at the door. And you're like, what? Who could that be? Why are they here so late? What do they want? Should I answer it? What should I do? And that's what happens in here. And I find that quite scary. And so this one really freaked me out too. And they filmed the whole thing with a steady cam or with a handheld cameras, the entire film. So it has that you are there quality and that tenseness to it. So that's the last one I want to talk about, is The Strangers. So those are 3 horror films that really freaked me out. And maybe you have your own. You probably do. So if so, leave it in the comments down here. I'd like to hear what you have to say. Leave a thumbs up. Don't leave a thumbs down. Subscribe would be great. Otherwise, thanks for watching, and I'll see you next time.